Who's the better coach, Dan Lanning or James Franklin? Let's find out on the eve of the Big Ten championship between Oregon and Penn State. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked on Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, I want to welcome everybody here. Thanks for making us your first listen at Locked on Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com and get started. So today we are going to compare Dan Lanning to James Franklin. We're also going to talk about the 7 common opponents that Oregon and Penn State had this year and compare them. There's a couple of surprises in there, actually. And we have the latest news from around the Big Ten recruiting and coaching news and all that. And we will make our pigskin pick. Normally it's pigskin picks. Just one game we all care about this weekend. Pigskin pick. That will be coming up here in just a second. We'll get to that for sure. All right. We got the Oregon Ducks, Penn State Nittany Lions, 8 o'clock Eastern time, Lucas Oil Stadium, Indianapolis. Can't wait for this big Saturday night tilt. We've previewed this game throughout the week. We'll continue to do so here today. In fact, our big in-depth preview was on Wednesday's podcast. Go check it out. We're going to cover enough here today to keep you happy. Let's start by looking at the head coaches. And that can make the difference between winning and losing a championship here this weekend. Dan Lanning versus James Franklin. Now, I like both coaches, but I think Lanning has the edge here. I'll just go on the record right at the top. But we're going to take a look at both of them here. Now, Lanning, he comes from good stock, comes from the Nick Saban / Kirby Smart coaching tree. And I admire the way he started his career. Man, he took a lot of graduate assistant coaching jobs that pay nothing along the way at Pitt, Arizona State, Alabama, in order just to get his chance in the business. I admire guys that grind and pay their dues. After a 2-year stint at Memphis as an assistant, he came to work for Kirby Smart at Georgia as a linebackers coach, former linebacker himself. He played that at William Jewell College back in 2004 to 2007. He was quickly promoted to Georgia's defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2021, and in 2022, he became the head coach of the Ducks. Seems to be working out just great for both sides. Now, earlier in this week, in my preview of this game, I attributed Oregon's quick rise upon joining the Big Ten to the fact that they were not only an explosive offensive team, but they were equipped defensively to play in the Big Ten. Unlike some other Pac-12 teams that came over that weren't known for defense. The Ducks, they've been a top 10 defense nationally for the last 2 seasons. So his background, Dan Lanning, as a linebacker and a defensive coach, certainly helped lead to that. My favorite quote for Dan Lanning, it came last year in an interview when he was asked about how teams or how he would have to adjust his team going into the more physical Big Ten from the Pac-12. His answer was that the Big Ten was going to have to adjust to him. It seemed very cocky and arrogant at the time, but he was 100% right, wasn't he? So far, so good. He's got a reputation for being a really smart coach. That was enhanced by his game management at the end of the Ohio State game. No doubt about that. People are still talking about that. I think he's a great coach and a great fit. And I also like the fact that this past offseason, when, the great Nick Saban retired and that primo Alabama job was open, he didn't even sniff, didn't even want it. He was good to go, talked about how happy he is at Oregon. Oregon's happy with him. His family's happy. He's not going anywhere. Going to have all of his success right there at Oregon. Now, how about James Franklin? He's been in charge of Penn State for 11 years now. Pretty impressive run. He routinely wins a lot of games. In 3 years as a head coach at Vanderbilt before he went to Penn State. That's as tough as any place to win football games. He won 24 games there. Had back-to-back 9-4 seasons. People notice that's how he got a bigger job at Penn State. So, including this year, He's had 5 separate 11-win seasons at Penn State. He's had a 10-win season and a 9-win season also on his Penn State resume. In fact, his Penn State record is 99-40. That's right. If he wins Saturday, that's win 100. He's going to the playoffs. So he'll have a chance to get 100 there if he doesn't get it on Saturday. That's impressive. So something to keep a lookout. I'm sure they'll mention it on the broadcast on CBS on Saturday night. If there's a knock on his career with all that greatness, it's that he can't win the big game, right? He's got several 2- and 3-loss seasons, and those 2 or 3 losses always seem to include Michigan and Ohio State, who up until last year were in the same division of the Big Ten and had to play them every single year, and those are the only games he loses. Penn State is almost always a good football team under Franklin. And, you know, he would always watch at the end of a very good season, watch Michigan or Ohio State be ahead of him and go into the college football playoffs or win the Big Ten. And then Penn State would go to a lesser but respectable bowl game after a successful year, but never make it to that next level. That's the knock on him. I think sometimes that's fair. It's a fair statement. So, look, no team in the country is going to benefit more than Penn State for having a 14 playoff expand to a 12-team playoff. Because if you go back year in and year out with kind of the same formula and system that we are using right now, even though we're all trying to figure it out, who's in, who's out, and all that stuff, Penn State would have made more playoff appearances than any other team on the outside looking in. I mean, you win 10 games, but you can't win the big one. But this expanded playoffs is going to help Penn State more than any other team. There's no question. And it's going to help them this year. I mean, if they lose on Saturday, they'll still get in the playoffs. If they win, they would have gone no matter if it was 4 teams or 12. So give them his due. But, you know, in all fairness, Dan Lanning had some criticisms kind of like that for a little bit, not quite the way James Franklin did, but people said that Lanning in Oregon couldn't beat Washington. I mean, it was the first 3 times. It was twice last year. But Lanning took a lot of heat for those because of his play calling and decision making and whether to kick or not kick. And they ended up losing twice last year to Washington by a field goal each time. If they win those games, they're going to the playoffs and not Washington last year. But in all, I think Dan Lanning and James Franklin are both excellent coaches, excellent recruiters. Both deserve this shot that they're going to get here on Saturday night and getting a Big Ten championship. So my hat's off to both of them. By the way, programming note. Did you know that the Big Ten Network is not doing any kind of post-game coverage? I know the game's going to air on CBS, the Big Ten championship game Saturday night. Going to air around 8 o'clock Eastern. Going to be no post-game. And CBS is going to maybe do one interview and then end the broadcast. That's where we come in. We're always there. We go live after big games on this Locked On Big Ten YouTube channel. And there's no bigger game than this. We're going live Saturday night. It's going to be Saturday night, Sunday morning. Probably going to be around 11:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 Pacific into Sunday morning if you're on the East Coast. But we're going to be there. We're going to be there live. We're going to invite you to join us. Mark your calendar right now. We're going to be there. Remind yourself, hey, after that game, I got to tune in to Locked On Big Ten on YouTube. We'll go live immediately after the game. And immediate reaction by me, analysis, commentary, and opinion, and kind of recreate everything that happened. But what I like about it is real-time live interaction with you guys because we got live comments. We do it every Saturday after big game, and it's always successful. But this past weekend, we had like 12,000 people. A lot of Ducks fans. We did it right after the Ducks game on Saturday night. I think we're going to blow through that number this week. So go ahead and join us Saturday night around 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific, live, Locked On Big Ten YouTube. Hope to see you there. In the meantime, thoughts and comments on the coaches. Do you like James Franklin or do you think Dan Lanning is a better coach? Love to hear from you. Let's get the debate going on the YouTube comments. Be sure to subscribe if you don't mind. Real quick, it's free. And no personal information is required. If you can just hit that little subscribe button, that really helps us out. Subscribe, follow, and share Locked On Big Ten for free, wherever you get your podcast. And that way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Also, don't forget, if you see on the scroll, if you're on video, talkbig10.com. That's our website. We put all of our podcasts there, group them by teams, your favorite schools in the Big Ten. We also have links if you want to do some Christmas shopping and get some Oregon Duck hats or some Penn State t-shirts or pennants for Michigan, Ohio State, for you or friends or stocking stuffers for Christmas. Go there. There's a little link. You do some shopping. TalkBig10.com. That's the number 10. TalkBig10.com. So check all of that out. All right. In the meantime, got some stuff I want to talk to you about still as we continue to preview the Big Ten championship game with Oregon and Penn State. I want to look. They had 7 common opponents on their schedule. Played a lot of most of the same teams. I want to kind of compare them a little bit. A lot of them were kind of within the same point range, but other teams, other styles gave them more fits than others. Will that come into play in Saturday night's championship game and maybe give one team an advantage over the other? Some of these results may surprise you. We have the latest recruiting news and also some coaching news too in the Big Ten. Offensive coordinator got fired. We'll do that. Plus we'll have our pigskin pick. Normally it's pigskin picks. Pigskin pick. We're just going to do the one game. Give you all my thoughts on all that. That's coming up in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. Let me tell you about Mint Mobile. I mean, we all like great deals. We don't want to go through big hoops for the deals, but we'll go through a little bit. Mint Mobile is making this easy to get wireless for $15 a month with a purchase of a 3-month plan. Turns out it's really easy to get the wireless for $15 a month. The longest part for most of you people is just sitting on hold, breaking up with your old provider. So very easy to get started. Go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. And there you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month. That includes a unlimited plan. So check it out. And you can get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 GB on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Well, thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and share and follow and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget to peruse our website for both podcasts, a little shopping if you want for school merchandise, talkbig10.com. All right, I want to look at common opponents between Oregon and Penn State. They had 7 of them this year. Let's start with the big one, Ohio State. They both played Ohio State. Of the 7 common opponents, both Oregon and Penn State, they beat all their opponents with the exception of the Buckeyes. Penn State did not beat them. Oregon did by 1. Oregon beat them 32-31. That was the game that we referred to earlier. Dan Lanning using the loophole in the rules and purposely had 12 men on the field to burn a few extra seconds, which cost Ohio State dearly at the end. Before their final play, they've been in field goal range to kick a game-winning field goal, but the clock ran out. Brilliant. Now, Penn State lost to the Buckeyes by a touchdown, 2013. Came up empty on 2 goal line stands. That was the difference in an otherwise even game. Also, don't forget, Ohio State fumbled the ball through the end zone. Looked like they were about to score. It was a touchback, so that's a touchdown they didn't get. This game could have been down to the wire as well, is what I'm saying. Very even. One valid criticism of James Franklin in the Ohio State game and offensive coordinator Andy Kolonicki, they didn't utilize their best weapon and tight end Ty Warren in those goal line situations, and they really should have. They should use him on Saturday night. Quick analysis, again, both Ohio State against Oregon and Penn State, those games could have gone either way, if not for a play or two. And therefore, the talent levels, if you want to compare everything, I think are pretty reasonable, pretty close, pretty similar. How did Oregon and Penn State match up on the other Big Ten opponents? Let's take a look. Let's start with Illinois, because Illinois was ranked in the top 25 for most of the year. Oregon had a pretty easy game with them, 138-9. Dylan Gabriel threw 3 touchdown passes in that game, and it was never close. Meanwhile, Illinois marched down the field on its opening drive at Happy Valley against Penn State to take a 7-0 lead, but Tom Allen's defense shut the door from that point on. Illinois didn't do a thing for the rest of that game. In fact, I think that was the most impressive defensive performance by Penn State all year, in my opinion. Just absolutely shut them down. And Illinois is a good team. They got 9 wins. If they win a bowl game, they're going to win 10 games this year. So good job by both of them. Penn State didn't win as easily as Oregon did, but Penn State did win 21-7 nevertheless. How about the Washington Huskies? They both played the Huskies. Oregon beat them pretty handily just last week, 49-21, 28-point win. Meanwhile, Penn State beat them in November in their whiteout by 29 points. All right. Oregon beat them by 28. Penn State beat them by 29. Very comparable. 35-6 was the score there. Let's look at the Wisconsin game. This one's interesting. This was Wisconsin gave both teams fits, actually, especially in the first half. Probably Oregon's biggest challenge in their Big Ten schedule this year was on prime time, nationally televised game Saturday night. The Ducks trailing on the road going into the fourth quarter, but they found a way to win 16-13. I would argue that had Wisconsin had a more accurate quarterback, Oregon probably would have suffered its first and only loss of the season that night, because I think Wisconsin did some things there. They just quarterback missed some wide open passes. Meanwhile, Penn State, like Oregon, they had a tough first half against Wisconsin at Wisconsin, but they did pull away in the second half, 28-13. Of note there, Drew Aller got banged up in that game, right? A good thing they got a solid backup in Bo Perbula, who handled things, and they pulled away and they won the game. Jalen Reed, remember, also with a key pick 6 in that game to give the Nittany Lions their first lead. So Penn State had an easier time against Wisconsin than, say, Oregon did. Both teams played Maryland. Oregon won at home by 21, while Penn State beat them last week at Beaver Stadium to clinch a spot in the Big Ten title game by 37 points. Really put it on them, even scoring a super late touchdown that Mike Loxley thought was running up the score. Nevertheless, James Franklin said, hey, we're trying to get into the playoffs, man. Point differential matters. And I agree with him. That's the way it's set up. Penn State very motivated in that game because they had heard that Ohio State lost, and a Penn State win gets them into the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis, and that's how it played out. Finally, both teams played lowly Purdue this year. Oregon beat them 35-0. That was at West Lafayette on a Friday night. That was shortly after becoming the number 1 team in the country. Penn State beat them by 39 points, 49-10. So one team beat them by 35. Penn State beat them by 39. Oregon got the shutout. Penn State gave up 10, but the margins are about the same against a very bad football team. So basically, when you look at all this, Oregon and Penn State played most of their common opponents to similar outcomes. And it's a good 7-game case study, and not just for 1 or 2 fluky games. And I think it's safe to assume that the talent level between both of these teams, the Ducks and the Nittany Lions, are pretty comparable. I think we're going to have a pretty even game on Saturday night. I'll give you my pick here in just a few minutes. And again, for a more in-depth analysis of players and positions for this big matchup between Oregon and Ohio State, in addition to what we did today, you can go back to watch or listen to Wednesday's Locked On Big Ten podcast. It's labeled Epic Showdown on the thumbnail on YouTube, or under the full title on YouTube, or the audio-only podcast, Oregon Ducks versus Penn State Nittany Lions. Who has the edge? You can go back and find that. I just told you that's the easiest way to find it. So let me know what you think before Saturday night's game with your comments on YouTube. All right, some other news. There seems to be a lot of people unhappy with Lincoln Riley after another disappointing season at USC, and he doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. And at least one school has inquired about stealing him away from the Trojans, Central Florida. They got a coaching vacancy. Gus Malzahn left, departed to become the Florida State offensive coordinator. So they reportedly reached out to Riley to inquire about his services at UCF. And he told reporters at a press conference that when schools inquire about him, he says, hey, I'm a Trojan. I'm at the place where I want to be. He also said his departure to coach anywhere else, it's a non-starter. It's a non-issue. He said, I'm at home, quote unquote. Now, Riley is 25-14 in 3 seasons as USC's head coach. 2024 was a disappointing 6-6 year. That's 14-11 over the past 2 seasons, so he's trending in the wrong direction. Then after a nice first year where he went 11-3 in his debut season and saw Caleb Williams win the Heisman as quarterback. Staying in Southern Cal, a double dose of bad news for the UCLA Bruins and the recruiting trail, first of all. We'll talk about their coaching in a minute. Quarterback, 4-star quarterback, Madden, Iama Lieva, flipped from the Bruins to Arkansas on Wednesday. His brother, Nico, is the quarterback at Tennessee. Minutes later, by the way, Madden's 3-star wide receiver recruit teammate at high school, Jace Brown, who was also committed to the Bruins, he also decided to bail. Both these guys played high school together at California's Long Beach Polytechnic high school. And at the same time, they both pretty much announced they were decommitting from UCLA and going to Arkansas as a package deal. Iama Lieva was the top-ranked member of Deshaun Foster's first recruiting class there at UCLA, and it's a blow to Foster's priority in recruiting the state of California at UCLA. So that's bad news. And I don't know if this is related or not, but UCLA fired offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy after 1 year with the Bruins. Eric Bieniemy, former Chiefs offensive coordinator, Washington offensive coordinator with the Commanders, always interviewing for head coaching jobs, never getting them, decided to go over to UCLA this year, coach for a year, and he gets fired. So I don't know what happens with his career. I don't know if he was, in line with these 2 recruits I just told you about. Maybe he didn't close the deal. I don't know. I have no idea about that. I just found that very strange and interesting because I know UCLA struggled on offense, but they didn't have a lot of weapons. It wasn't a lot to work with. Wasn't a lot of groceries to cook with there. So, by the way, he'll be replaced by Indiana quarterback coach and co-offensive coordinator Tino Sunseri. A lot of Kurt Cignetti's guys stay with him. They came from James Madison to Indiana, and they've been together for years. But he's going to be the OC at UCLA. The Bruins offense ranked 126 in the nation this year, only 18 points per game. They rarely got above 20 points, and they finished at 5-7. Yesterday on Locked On Big Ten, we told you that former Michigan and Iowa quarterback Cade McNamara was leaving the Hawkeyes, and he will appeal for a 7th year of eligibility in the transfer portal. Now, former USC quarterback Miller Moss, who was benched by Lincoln Riley last month, is looking at Iowa as a possible landing spot in the transfer portal. He stormed onto the scene last year when he stepped in for the departing Caleb Williams and threw 6 touchdown passes that got everybody's attention in the Holiday Bowl, and then was the starter this year. But he never got close to duplicating that effort in any of the Trojans games this year. In 9 games, he threw 18 touchdown passes and 9 interceptions. But if he does go to Iowa, I think that'd be a good fit for both sides. I do. It'd be an upgrade for Iowa. But Moss is also looking at Auburn and Michigan and Louisville. Rutgers just flipped a running back from Wake Forest. Pledged Terrell Mitchell. And he seems to remind everybody of Rutgers' current running back, Kyle Monangai, who led the Big Ten in rushing last season in 2023. This guy's 5'9", 190 pounds, 3-star recruit, been verbally committed to Wake since April. This fall in high school, he ran for 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns and converted 8 2-point conversions. Great around the goal line. Great nose for the goal, for the end zone. For his career, he has over 2,600 rushing yards. And he also had 72 catches and 682 yards and 9 receiving touchdowns as well. And he also has 4 kickoff returns for touchdowns and a punt return for a score. And he plays defense, 24 tackles and 2 interceptions as well. This sounds like a Greg Schiano guy. And finally, Michigan signed their athletic director, Ward Manuel, who is also the chairperson of the College Football Playoff Committee, to a 5-year extension through 2030. So Ward Manuel continued to be in charge of the Michigan football program and all their athletics. Basketball, hired Dusty May, got through the Jim Harbaugh stuff. They won a national championship, 3 straight years in the playoffs. They've had a good run over there at Michigan. All right, it is time for our pigskin pick. Just one game to pick. I have some thoughts on it. It's a bit of a complicated pick, but I'll boil it down. I'll make a commitment. We'll get to it. That's all coming up next in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. FanDuel makes the excitement of watching games even more exciting if you have a little action on it. How about NFL action? With FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of the game, want to do some live game action right there. Stats, scores, and the same page where you put your bets in the first place. Right there. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Monday Night Football. It's the Bengals at the Cowboys. Cowboys +5. I'm tempted to go Cowboys here because the Bengals and Joe Burrow would be having an MVP season, but his defense keeps losing games. He's throwing up huge numbers. I think the Bengals will win this game. So give me the Bengals -5. And I like the over big time, 49.5. Make bets like that. FanDuel.com. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. I want to tell you, let's see here. We got our pick, our pigskin pick. I'm going to go full screen here if you're audio only. Not much to it, just the game here. And let's take a look. Here it is. The Big Ten championship game Saturday night, Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, 8 o'clock. Don't forget Locked On Big Ten going live right after this game. All right. Third-ranked Penn State with their 11-1 record. #1 Oregon with their 12-0 record. Head-to-head, Oregon is a 3.5-point favorite. The number is 50.5. Here's how I see this going. First of all, I will tell you, the higher the score, the higher the total, the more it favors Oregon. If there's a lower scoring game, it favors Penn State. But I'm going to pick Oregon. And I'm going to play right on the margins for both the point spread and the total here. I'm going to say that Oregon wins this game 27-23. That's a 4-point win that covers the 3.5, and that's a half point under the 50.5. All right, so I take the under. Going to take Oregon to cover. I will say this. If the total is lower, like I got it here at 50, right? If I'm going to say 27-23, if it's, in the 40s, the more so I think that favors Penn State. So if it's a lower scoring game, I'll hedge a little bit. I'll say Penn State wins. But if it goes the way I think it will go, I'll take the Oregon Ducks to cover. They'll be the Big Ten champions, and both teams will go into the playoffs. And who knows? Both teams may play each other again in the playoffs. I think these two teams are very evenly matched. There's some people that think Oregon's going to score a lot and run away with this. I'm not so sure about that. I think it's going to be a close game, and I can't wait. So once again, the game will take place Saturday night, and we will go live on Locked On Big Ten on YouTube right after the game. Going to be about 11:30 Eastern time, 8:30 Pacific. And live comments from you, my reaction to you, back and forth, my opinion on the game, all of that. Before we go, we got some Friday night Big Ten college basketball. In fact, throughout the weekend, it's conference play. We're starting early in the Big Ten. Friday night, we got 19th ranked Illinois at 6-1, taking on 6-3 Northwestern at Northwestern. Saturday, men's basketball. Rutgers at Ohio State, noon on FS1. Nebraska at Michigan State, noon Eastern, Big Ten Network. Number 11, Wisconsin, and number 5, Marquette. Marquette has had a schedule. They are playing some ranked people. Got to give them respect. That game's at 1:30 Eastern on Fox. Iowa's at Michigan, 2 o'clock. They tip off Eastern time, 2 o'clock. FS1 and USC at Washington, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific on the Big Ten Network. And then on Sunday, Maryland is at 8th-ranked Purdue. That's at noon on the Big Ten Network. And then UCLA at number 12, Oregon. That's at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific on the Big Ten Network. So a full weekend of Big Ten sports, and we are all over it right here on Locked On Big Ten. Thanks for checking us out. Many ways for you to be involved with us as well. Twitter, X, at Talk Big Ten number 10. Don't forget YouTube comments. You can get them going anytime, back and forth. I want to hear from Oregon and Penn State people. Wouldn't mind a little trash talking for some fun. And don't forget our website, talkbig10.com. That's the number 10. You see the scroll on the bottom if you're on video. All of our podcasts go there, and you can get some Christmas shopping merchandise from your favorite schools there as well. Be sure, no matter what you do, to subscribe. It's free. Always ask you to do that. Subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Hard to believe that's it. Regular season done. We're down to the Big Ten championship game. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the game Saturday night. And I'll enjoy seeing you and talking to you late Saturday Night Live here on Locked On Big Ten. For Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman. Talk to you next time.